We're in Deptford, London today to talk about the life, campaign and times of this man, William Hartnett, from the Rifle Brigade. Deptford in southeast London was a gritty working class area that provided much labour for the local dockyard, though by the mid-1800s that was in decline. From 1871 until 1913, the Deptford shipyard site was the City of London Corporation's foreign cattle market, to which live animals were brought by cattle boat from across 4 continents and provided about half of London's meat supply. Described as having a fresh complexion, blue eyes and brown hair, William was a short man at 5'3" and 111 pounds or 50 kilograms, and a 33-inch chest. William also had a distinctive mark of a scar on his left breast. His address was given as on Lucas Street in Deptford. So here's the house that William was born in, along with his family, his father Alexander, his mother Mary and his sister. It must have been quite an emotional farewell as he left here in October 1883 to an uncertain future in the army. At 24 years and 10 months, he was relatively older compared to the majority of recruits of that era, and already had a profession as a painter. He seemed to come from a relatively secure working-class family. Perhaps it was a sense of adventure or boredom that made him attest to the Rifle Brigade. So this would have been the exact rail line that William would have taken as he left London to Winchester on his first day to join the army. On 24th of October 1883, he arrived at the Rifle Brigade barracks in Winchester from London and officially joined the army. He signed under a short service engagement, meaning 7 years active service and 5 years on the reserves. He also received a 4th class education certificate, likely learning to read and write. For a higher 3rd class qualification, the requirements for the candidate was to read aloud and to write from dictation passages from an easy narrative and to work examples in the 4 compound rules of arithmetic and the reduction of money. To reach sergeant, you needed a 2nd class certificate. William spent the majority of the next year on home service within the United Kingdom. He would have learnt what being a rifleman entailed. The Rifle Brigade was an infantry rifle regiment of the British Army formed in January 1800 as the experimental corps of riflemen to provide sharpshooters, scouts and skirmishers. The Rifle Brigade was the descendant of the 95th Rifles, made famous in the Sharp series. William would have been taught to be a crack shot, fight in irregular order and to think on his feet. Ideal skills for his future deployment in Burma. In September 1884, William was posted to India to join the 4th Battalion, likely travelling via the Suez Canal. For a streetwise city lad from inner London, the sights and smells of India must have come as a culture shock for William. Records are a bit sketchy, but for the next 4 years the Rifles were stationed in India, and one can assume that they got accustomed to routine garrison duty, moving from cantonment to cantonment. Cantonments were military stations that were located at strategically important areas across the country. At this point, there are around 65,000 British troops posted permanently in India. In 1885, Britain declared war on Burma, becoming involved in the Third Anglo-Burmese War. Initially, it went well for the British, and Mandalay, the Burmese capital, was quickly secured, and King Thibaw, the Burmese king, deposed and exiled. However, an insurgency and guerrilla war began in the countryside, mainly located in the jungles and harsh terrain of Upper Burma, leading the British to request additional reinforcements from India to quell the resistance. By 1886, there were 25,000 British and Indian troops deployed in Burma on counterinsurgency operations. The conflict rumbled on, with the British resorting to mobile flying columns, building stockades across the country and establishing garrisons to deny freedom of movement to rebel groups. In December 1888, William and the 4th Battalion arrived in Burma along with other reinforcements to participate in these operations. Arriving at Rangoon aboard the Indian Marine troopship Canning, the 4th Battalion relieved elements of the 1st Battalion. They then moved to the Karen Field Force to take part in a punitive expedition in East Karenni targeting dissident groups. Disease and the threat of ambush was ever present. Although figures for the 4th Battalion are sketchy, the 1st Battalion lost 3 officers and 130 soldiers during their Burma service between October 1886 and March 1889. Upper Burma was described by the British as one big military obstacle. During the rainy season, troops were unable to sustain active operations. Soldiers' boots would perish in mud and water and fall apart after a few weeks' wear. Paths were narrow tracks, surrounded by jungle growth, giving limited visibility for patrols. Mobile columns were forced to resort to pack mules to transport goods, with essential supplies being dropped off by river steamers. Both Indian and British soldiers suffered from heatstroke and malaria. Communications relied on visual signalling, as many messengers were intercepted by insurgents on the jungle trails. The insurgency would continue until 1892. Despite this, William must have thrived as a wartime soldier, as he was granted a Good Conduct Badge on the 22nd of October 1889. For over a year, William was engaged in operations until he returned for home on 24th of January 1890. Upon discharge, William was described as a very good character by his commanding officer. It is likely that friends and family would have celebrated his return at a local working-class Deptford pub like the Dog and Bell, which was established in 1741. I wonder if William, like many returning vets in recent wars, struggled to relate his jungle fighting experiences to his friends and family, or adjust smoothly to the routine and rigours of late Victorian life in London. So there is a happy ending to William's return. On the 2nd of July 1891, behind me at St Paul's Church, William married Hannah Reed. William drops off our radar here, but I would like to imagine him leading a long, content life and living into old age.